Imagine this. It's June 13th, 2025. You wake up, reports are flying. An unprecedented air attack.
Yeah, something like 200 warplanes streaking through Syrian airspace. Target deep inside Iran.
But here's the puzzle, right, from the sources we've got. These planes, loaded up with heavy munitions, their max range is about 1,200 kilometers. Tehran, though, that's 1,500 kilometers away. So how do you possibly close that gap?
And that's where it gets really interesting. What our sources detail is the alleged method. 2 U.S. fuel tankers,
Okay.
based out of Qatar, reportedly refueled these Israeli planes, like midair over Iraqi airspace.
Wow. So that alleged support, that logistical piece, would have been absolutely critical then.
Oh, completely. For an operation of this scale, hitting targets that far away, it immediately points to, well, a complex web of international involvement, even if it's indirect support.
And that's just one, really, of the eye-opening details in this stack of sources we're diving into today.
Exactly.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission, really, is to unpack all this material detailing this significant escalation in the Israel-Iran conflict. We're focusing specifically on those really dramatic events in June 2025. We're here to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the insights, give you a shortcut to understanding the players, the strategies, the whole sequence of events, at least as it's described in this material we have.
Think of it as your guide, yeah.
Yeah.
Getting you up to speed on a pretty critical geopolitical moment.
We'll explore that initial Israeli offensive operation Rising Lion, they apparently called it, look at its surprising tactics.
And then we'll dive into the, rapid, intense series of retaliations and counterstrikes that just unfolded over the next few days. It really pulls you into the conflict.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Operation Rising Lion. We all know about the long-standing Iran-Israel tension, that's the backdrop.
Right.
But our sources point to a very specific, immediate catalyst for this escalation, what was boiling over right before June 13th.
So the sources really highlight the conclusion of those U.S.-Iran negotiations about Iran's nuclear program. That wrapped up June 12th, 2025.
Okay.
And this came, apparently, after a 2-month deadline the White House had set for Iran to halt its nuclear activities.
Ah.
So you connect that to the bigger picture. The Israeli government consistently saw Iran's uranium enrichment as, well, an existential threat.
Right.
And that perception, it's detailed right here in the sources, that was their stated reason for launching this preemptive air attack. The goal was destroying those facilities.
And just hours before the strike, June 12th, 4:30 p.m., our sources describe this pivotal phone call, Netanyahu and U.S. President Trump.
Yeah, that call is mentioned. Netanyahu reportedly laid out the whole plan.
And Trump's response, according to these sources, the U.S. military would not jump in directly.
Right, no direct participation.
But they would provide logistical and intelligence support.
Which loops back to what you said earlier.
Exactly. That alleged support, including the midair refueling maybe, it seems like it was crucial to making this whole thing even feasible.
It really seems that way. So Operation Rising Lion officially kicks off.
Yeah.
June 13th, 01:00 a.m., around 200 Israeli warplanes, F-35s, F-15s, F-16s, take off.
And they used Syrian airspace, reportedly.
That's what the sources indicate, yeah. Utilizing Syrian airspace.
So we talked about the range challenge, solved, allegedly, by refueling. But the other huge piece of this puzzle, how did they get into heavily defended Iranian airspace?
That's a critical question, isn't it? Bypassing sophisticated air defense systems, not easy.
Definitely not. What do the sources say about that?
Well, this is quite something. The answer, according to these sources, is that before the attack, Mossad agents allegedly infiltrated Iran.
Okay, boots on the ground.
Covertly, yes. And they brought in UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. But get this disassembled in parts, inside suitcases.
In suitcases, seriously.
That's the report. These UAVs were then apparently reassembled by the agents inside Iran. And then, once the Israeli jets actually entered Iranian airspace, these agents flew the UAVs to basically distract some Iranian air defense systems.
Draw their fire, maybe?
Yeah, or maybe jam them and destroy others. It's a significant tactic. It's essentially creating the window for the Israeli aircraft to operate more freely.
That's incredible. A mix of covert ops on the ground and high-tech aerial warfare.
It really shows a sophisticated approach, blending those elements.
Okay, so that's how they got in. Once those planes were inside Iranian airspace, what were the primary targets in that initial massive strike, according to the sources?
The first bomb reported, EO 2.40 a.m., hit the Natanz nuclear facility near Isfahan.
Natanz, right, big one.
Big one. The report says the above-ground part was rendered unusable. But crucially, the underground facility, where the enriched uranium was supposedly kept,
Yeah.
that remained undamaged according to these sources.
Interesting. So not a complete knockout blow there. What else?
The Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center also took heavy damage. And in Koman, 5 strategic targets were hit.
And after Qom, our sources say the planes split up into 2 groups.
That's right, divided their forces. One group headed straight for Tehran, arrived around 02:55 a.m.
And this is where the targeting gets really specific, doesn't it? Almost personal.
Extremely precise. This group reportedly went after the homes of high-ranking Iranian commanders and scientists working on the nuclear program.
Homes, not just bases or facilities.
Homes. The reported casualties are quite significant. Revolutionary Guards Commander Hassan Salami, the Iranian Chief of General Staff Mohammad Hussein Baki, Quds Force Commander Esmail Khani.
Wow, top brass.
Very top brass. Plus several other high-ranking military leaders, and the sources mentioned 6 scientists as well.
That suggests a very deliberate strategy, maybe decapitation, taking out key leadership and
It
expertise.
certainly looks like a major element of the strategy described here, yes. A shift in targeting.
Highly targeted strike on leadership. Okay, what about the rest of the planes? That first group after Tehran.
After hitting those homes, the first group reportedly moved on to Tabriz, bombed the Sevdaya military barracks and 3 radar facilities. Heavy damage reported there too.
And the second group.
The second group struck targets across several provinces, military bases and nuclear facilities in Hamadan, including what's described as the country's most important radar base.
Okay.
Also targets in Loristan, an air base, 2 military bases in Kermanshah, 2 radar centers, 3 military facilities, even the Khosravi border crossing. All reported heavy damage.
That's a huge sweep across western Iran.
A very wide-ranging initial strike.
Yeah.
And the sources confirm all the warplanes then exited Iranian airspace, again via Iraqi airspace.
Okay. So this massive, complex, multi-pronged attack happens. Iran's response must have been swift.
Absolutely. The intensity, the scope, it naturally provoked a rapid response. Iran launched its first retaliation on the night of June 14th.
And what did that look like?
Nearly 300 missiles fired at Israel.
300. That's a barrage. How effective is Israel's defense?
Well, Israel's Iron Dome system reportedly intercepted a large number, around 250 of them.
So most were stopped.
Most, yes. But still, approximately 50 missiles apparently got through and struck various locations across Israel, which, indicates some penetration of the defenses.
Still significant damage potential there. And Israel's counter-retaliation, was that immediate?
Almost immediate. At 23:11, so just before midnight on June 14th, the Israeli military announced a new wave of attacks. Military targets in Tehran again.
Back to Tehran.
Yes. At around 01:00 a.m., so early hours of the 15th, the reports say Israeli missiles hit the Iranian Ministry of Defense building.
Wow.
And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Justice buildings, right in Tehran.
Hitting the levers of government now.
Exactly. Plus, Merabat Airport in Tehran and Mossad International Airport were bombed. Significant damage reported there too.
So airports, ministries, what else?
And then 2 major oil fields in Iran's Bushehr province were bombed. The sources say completely destroyed.
Oil fields. Okay, that's hitting the economy hard. This feels like a clear escalation, moving beyond just military assets.
It definitely shows a move towards targeting critical infrastructure, yeah. Economic targets, government buildings, not just military sites anymore.
So the cycle continues, Iran's turn again. What was their second major response?
Their second retaliation involved close to 200 ballistic missiles.
Okay.
But also, interestingly, 7 supersonic missiles.
Supersonic, those are much harder to stop, right? Speed, maneuverability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Notoriously difficult to intercept. So introducing those marks, a pretty significant escalation in the type of weaponry being used. And they also launched dozens of UAVs in this wave.
A mixed swarm approach. Did these get through?
Again, many were intercepted. But the sources report at least 25 missiles hit Tel Aviv and Haifa.
Casualties.
12 fatalities reported from these strikes. And in Haifa, the Bazan oil facilities were hit again. Heavy damage reported there.
So hitting Israeli energy infrastructure in return. Tit for tat.
Very much seems like it. Highlighting the vulnerability of these key economic targets on both sides.
And then things got even more complex, didn't they? The conflict started pulling in other players.
That's a crucial development. On the morning of June 15th, our sources report a joint attack. Iran and the Houthis in Yemen.
Together.
Firing nearly 200 ballistic missiles simultaneously at Israel.
Wow. Okay, beyond just the sheer number, that's a big strategic shift, isn't it?
It's a huge escalation of actors involved. This joint attack, if accurate, signals Iran may be leveraging its proxy networks for direct, large-scale offensive actions,
Blurring the lines.
completely blurring the lines of responsibility and significantly expanding the conflict's reach. It fundamentally changes the regional dynamic, showing how non-state actors can be integrated into state-level military ops.
How effective was this joint attack?
Again, most were intercepted by defense systems, but a considerable number still apparently hit Tel Aviv. Reports mention 61 buildings damaged and 9 people killed.
So, despite defenses still causing significant damage and loss of life, Israel's response to this widening conflict.
Israel kept up the pressure. Early on June 16th, Israeli aircraft reportedly targeted South Pars.
South Pars, isn't that one of the world's biggest natural gas fields?
Exactly. Huge energy asset for Iran. A fire erupted there, and according to the source material, it was still being fought when the report was compiled.
Another major economic blow. What else happened on the 16th?
Later that day, more strikes. Many military facilities hit, but also UAV production facilities in Qum and Yazd.
Going after the drone factories now.
Seems like it. The Yazd facility was reported to be completely destroyed. It points to an attempt to degrade Iran's drone warfare capability.
Which, as we discussed with that alleged Mossad operation earlier, is clearly becoming central here.
Absolutely, a key feature of this conflict as described.
Okay, so Israel hits South Pars, hits drone factories. Iran's response, was there another wave?
Yes, Iran's fifth missile attack came on the night of June 16th. Approximately 200 ballistic missiles launched simultaneously.
Another large barrage. Interceptions.
A significant portion intercepted, yes, but again, many landed on Israeli territory.
And what were the key impacts this time?
Critically, the Dimona nuclear research reactor was reportedly damaged.
Dimona, Israel's nuclear facility, that's incredibly sensitive.
Very sensitive. It was closed as a precaution, according to the reports. Even damage leading to a precautionary closure marks a very, very dangerous escalation.
Absolutely. Any other damage from that wave?
Energy facilities, natural gas terminals, water treatment plants in Ashkelon and Ashdod also sustained minor structural damage. So continued hits on infrastructure.
Then something really dramatic happened on the evening of the 16th, almost out of a movie.
Yeah, this one stands out. Israeli warplanes apparently bombed the Iranian state television building.
Okay, hitting state media, but the timing.
Right, during a live broadcast, where a news anchor was apparently defying Israel on air.
Bombing a TV station live on air, that's psychological warfare, isn't it?
It's an unmistakable message. You have to think it's aimed at undermining morale, controlling the narrative, making a very public statement right in the middle of the conflict.
Pushing beyond traditional military targets into information warfare, absolutely.
Definitely seems that way.
And the strikes didn't stop there into June 17th.
No, they continued. An Israeli air attack on military facilities reportedly resulted in the death of Major General Ali Shadmani.
Another high-ranking official, wasn't he just appointed?
Yes, incredibly recently. He'd only been appointed as headquarters commander 2 days prior, according to the source.
So, continued targeting of leadership, even newly appointed ones.
It suggests a sustained effort to disrupt command and control, a tactic we saw earlier with those strikes on commanders' homes. Constant pressure on the leadership structure.
And when the source material was prepared, the situation was still ongoing.
That's right. At that time, Israeli aircraft were reportedly conducting new attacks on military targets, missile launchers, UAV production facilities, mainly in western Iran. The cycle was still very much in motion.
Okay, wow. Let's try and quickly recap this cascade of events.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. What we've just laid out for you, drawing directly from the source material, is this incredibly detailed, day-by-day account of a rapid, intense escalation between Israel and Iran in June 2025.
Yeah, we've seen these sophisticated preemptive strikes, the alleged external logistical support like refueling.
Those surprising covert tactics like the Mossad agents supposedly smuggling in UAV parts in suitcases.
Right, that was striking. And then this fierce escalating cycle of retaliation, back and forth, hitting critical infrastructure, military assets.
And even key leadership, specific individuals, media outlets, a very broad range of targets.
And this deep dive hopefully highlights not just the raw military power involved, but also the evolving strategies, the strategic thinking perhaps.
And the immediate devastating impacts on both sides, as reported here. You've heard about specific sites hit, the types of weapons allegedly used, from conventional missiles to supersonic ones and drones.
And even the human toll mentioned in these sources. the blurring lines between state and non-state actors, like that joint Houthi attack.
The precision targeting, the speed of it all, those feel like really central takeaways from this material.
Definitely.
And as always, we want to be clear, our goal here is simply to convey the information that's contained within the source material we reviewed. We want to ensure you understand the reported events impartially. We're not endorsing any specific viewpoint presented in that content itself.
Right, just laying out what the sources describe. So what does all this mean for you, listening? Well, this kind of detailed, factual understanding, or at least understanding the reported facts, is crucial, especially now, with so much information flying around.
Yeah, it lets you hopefully see beyond just the headlines, maybe grasp some of the granular realities of these complex geopolitical events, helps you form your own informed perspectives. So let's leave you with a final thought, something to mull over. Considering the really specific nature of these attacks described in the sources, everything from that alleged refueling operation, the Mossad drone infiltration, the integrated proxy attacks with the Houthis, to the targeting of individual commanders by name, specific infrastructure like the South Pars gas field, or even that live TV broadcast, what might these tactics signal about the future of warfare?
That's a great question, particularly in conflicts maybe between states and non-state actors, or between countries using these asymmetric strategies.
Yeah. What questions does this raise for you about how nations might project power or defend themselves moving forward? Something to think about.